I worked at the University of Tulsa for 18 years. I was the vice president for facilities and campus operations. That's kind of the title of what I did there. Was I oversaw all our athletic facilities and some other things that we threw in there. Campus security, I also oversaw their shuttle program, the mailroom, everything that it takes to run the city of a campus, I was in charge of. The long and the short of it, I'll back up and give you a history of how I ended up to where I'm at today. Rob and I grew up together. He was a friend of my older brother's, and we played minor hockey together in Windsor. I grew up in Maidstone. Went to St. Anne's High School out in Tecumseh. Got a scholarship to go to Lake Superior State to play college hockey. Played there for 4 years. We won the national championship in '88, my senior year. And after that, I went to Europe and played hockey with Rob in Holland. And then I came back after that and decided I didn't know what I wanted to do because I had never planned on a career, and decided that I was going to continue my education. And I went back and got my MBA from Lake Superior State as a graduate assistant. And we won the national championship again in 1992 when I was a graduate assistant hockey coach. And the interesting part of that was that, basically I had 6 years of college education that I only ended up having to pay one semester out of my parents' money to go through my schooling. When I was in college, I still didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that I wanted to continue my education, so I decided that business sounded to be about the right thing to do. And I didn't really ever want to get into coaching. I thought it was such a racket. I didn't want to be responsible for 25, 18-year-old kids. I didn't want my future to be determined on one Friday night away from, me being a coach or not being a coach at the collegiate level in the United States. So I decided to get into athletic administration. And my first year, I was the assistant facilities manager at Lake Superior, which I managed the ice arena, the gymnasium, the pool. It was basically a pretty big complex. And 6 months into the job, my boss left to go to Northern Colorado to become the athletic director, and the school was in such a budget crunch at the time that they put me in charge of the whole operation, which was totally scary because I knew absolutely nothing about what I was doing. I thought at the time I did, but I really didn't as I look back on it now. And one of the things that was interesting, because I was probably 24 years old, and I was managing people that were 50, 60 union employees that were custodians that they wanted no part of me. And I was full of energy and wanting to get things done, wanting to hang the moon. And it became a really frustrating situation. So I stayed there at Lake Superior as the assistant athletic director for 8 years. And my growth with that was, we managing the day-to-day operations of Division I hockey program, but Division II, everything else in basketball. So there's a whole different philosophy. I'm sure you're starting to become aware of it between Division I and Division II. And then there's also a huge difference, just change in Division I at the highest level compared to Division I at the medium, what they call the mid-majors level, as it relates to money, as it relates to facilities, as it relates to support, and also philosophy of how the programs are funded. We all know and all have heard of Michigan and Alabama and Ohio State. Well, there's 370, I think, Division I schools, and there's probably only about 10 to 15 schools that actually turn a profit with their athletic programs. And so there's this common misnomer that there's this huge amount of money out there that supports everything that goes on. And a lot of the times the universities are subsidizing the athletic programs back. I'll get into that a little bit later when I move to Tulsa, but I wanted to kind of lay the groundwork with you about Lake Superior and it's kind of my development there and the philosophy with the facilities and how it's related to supporting the athletes. Lake Superior had we had again one Division I program which was highly successful, and everything else was Division II, but most of the resources went into the Division I program because it was the highest return on the investment. And the school looked at it that, if we sink money into the hockey program, they're on national TV, once a month, they're playing for national championships, that's the biggest return and where we can spend our money that's going to impact the image of our university. And so you're dealing with coaches as well that are your customers that are at all different levels. The Division II coaches generally aren't paid as well, and they're usually somebody that's on the way up, young, given the whole program to try to operate on their own, and they're allowed to make a lot of mistakes. And you try to give coaches as much leeway as you can so that they don't hang themselves. And part of the philosophy is the difference between Division I and Division II is Division II, they want us, the philosophy is we want to put a program out there, we don't want anybody to get hurt, we want people to have a good time, we want to make the college experience the best that it can. Whereas if you start getting up higher in the funding model with Division I, it starts to get ratcheted up from pressure of wins and losses, what kind of experience kids are having, and what's the image of the program and how it represents the university. So I stayed at Lake Superior there, and I had more and more increasing responsibility. We did a major ice arena renovation where we added suites to the hockey arena. We added 16 suites, which at the time there was only 2 schools in all the CCHA at the time, us and Michigan State, that had suites. And that would have been, the early 90s when there was a big shift in the focus on amenities for fans, and how it was perceived. Before it was just like you could just come into the game, buy a ticket, and go in. Well, now people had become or are becoming more demanding of the entertainment dollar. Well, we're not just here to watch the hockey game or the basketball game or the football game. We're here to see the entertainment on the scoreboard. I want to have a good family atmosphere. I want it to be affordable. And so you'll see back in the early 90s, there started to become a big shift with collegiate athletics towards fan amenities and to be more of a pro-style entertainment background. So we, then I stayed there through that construction and major renovation, and then I took a flyer on a job at the University of Tulsa that I saw in the NCAA News. That's a good resource if you're ever looking for jobs in the facilities business. The University of Tulsa was building an arena on campus, 9,000 seats, and I went in and interviewed, sent my resume off and hadn't heard anything for like 4 months. Then out of the blue, I get a call and they said, hey, would you be interested in doing a phone interview tomorrow, basically the next day? And I said, sure. So I did that. They had a group of people, of 8 people that I interviewed with over the phone. And they said that they called me after that and said, hey, okay, would you be willing to come in for an on-campus interview the following week? So I said, sure. So now it's Monday of that week, and then I flew out to Tulsa from Sault Ste. Marie on the following Monday, and then it was a series of 2 days of interviews, and I met everywhere from student groups to the President's Council to the executive group to, all just a wide range of a group of student athletes. And during that interview process, I was offered the position while I was there. And either they were really desperate at that time when they hired me, or I like to think that I wowed them. But I was, in my 30s at that time, and I didn't have a tremendous amount of experience. So, I got the job, and then all within 2 weeks, my life changed, and off to Tulsa I went. And Tulsa was probably never a place that I thought that I would ever end up. You know, when you graduate, you pick a list of 50 places you think you're going to end up in your life, and I'm not sure it would have made the top 100. But it was a great opportunity from the standpoint of they had a great athletic program, a great reputation. You know, the people there just seemed to fit with me, and I seemed to fit with them, and so we started that. And kind of what I was saying is that, you know, once I got into facilities management, I really took to heart that, you know, you just got to take a job. Your first job could be, you know, nighttime custodian if you really want that bad enough, and you have to be willing to work for low pay because there's not a lot of pay in this industry initially. I mean, it can be, and it can turn out that way, and it can lead to a lot of different things, and it did for me. As I took that first job, I never was afraid to mop the floor or set a table up or take tickets at the volleyball game. Or, you know, I can say that at any point I've done pretty much just about everything you can do in facilities management, from announcing at the volleyball game to being the color play-by-play guy on the hockey broadcast. You know, you can't be afraid to do some things to learn, and I'm a firm believer of that you learn by doing. And I think my business background has helped me tremendously with budgeting and capital forecasts. As I moved on forward, I had a good base that was set up at Lake Superior. So fast forward the clock, I moved to Tulsa, we build the arena, I come in at the end of it, and I was fortunate enough to be able to purchase almost everything that went in the arena by myself, from the scoreboard to the seats to conference tables and it was they didn't have anybody with that skill set on campus, so I was pretty much thrown right from the pan into the fire. I'll tell you a great story. Is the first time I went to Tulsa, and they said, "Okay, Terry, we got to get a scoreboard," and I'm thinking, scoreboard, what are you guys thinking? Well, we don't know. So I started researching scoreboards, and video boards was more specifically what I was looking for. And I got a private jet, because we were a private school. I got on a private jet, and I was thinking, so I flew to Michigan State, actually, because I knew some people there, and they were having a video shoot out there. And they had these video boards from Mitsubishi, Sony, and Daktronics, and they hung them in the arena there so that you could see the three different scoreboards side by side, the video boards. And I said, just by vision, I looked and I go, well, that's the best looking of the three. It was Mitsubishi at the time. And went back to my boss after I figured out the costs and the sizing and said, okay, it's going to be $3 million. I told my boss, and he goes, okay, go ahead. So I went, I just spent $3 million in about a day and a half here, and no one once questioned me. And I had never bought a scoreboard before, which was scary. But on the other hand, it was such an eye-opening experience to being in the world of big-time college athletics that, you know, this is serious about what we're doing, and it's not like we're nickel and diming everything we're doing. And that really started me out on my journey at Tulsa. After we built the arena and successfully opened it, I was able to go in there and hire the whole staff individually, from the custodians to the operations people to the ticket officer, you know, and the people in the concessions. So I was able to negotiate concession agreements, which, you know, had I been at any other place, I probably would have never been able to been exposed to any of that at such a young age. And then as we did that, we started buying property up around the university, and I think Rob has talked to you all about doing some research of our campus. From then we built the tennis center, which was 12 indoor courts, and 6 indoor courts and 12 outdoor courts. And that project started out at $6 million and ended up at $18 million. Then we did that. We built a soccer complex, softball complex. I did a rec center. And as it relates to athletics, so we've pretty much built a volleyball training center, an indoor rowing center where our rowing team can practice outside the elements with indoor tanks. We did a soccer practice facility, cross country. We also did a golf training center out at the Patriot Golf Course. So pretty much when I first came to Tulsa, there was only one sport that played on campus, and that was football. And we had a 40,000 seat stadium that was built in the 30s that had been piecemealed together. I'll talk a little bit specifically further on down about the football renovation. But so again, back to being able to be in the right place at the right time. I got exposed to being able to rebuild or build every sports facility on campus since the day I landed there. And there was always one more carrot. So when I was working on one project, they would draw me into the next one. We'd finish up soccer, then we started on track. And just before I left there in August to move to Florida here to be with my fiance, I had on the books and I did the design work for an indoor football training facility, which was on the books for $40 million, which they're out fundraising for now. So it's a 100-yard field indoor with an 80-foot roof, 8-lane track, indoor full track, weight room, and an academic center, which was $40 million. And so I did that, and then I left, and then they're fundraising for that now. So I love Tulsa. It was great. You know, our athletic program was second to none at our level. I think Rob has talked to you all about the difference between mid-major schools and the Power Five. And we're in the conference, or the American Athletic Conference, which is commonly the 6th conference, you know, so we're right on the cusp of being in the Power Five, although, you know, there's some other issues there you can talk about too, that some of the schools that are at the lower end of the Power Five are about the same as the schools that are at the top 6, you know what I'm saying? So budget-wise, like in our conference, the American Conference, if you research it, there's Tulsa, Memphis, which is, everybody's heard about the Memphis basketball program. Their football program is really good right now. I think they're in the top 25, but lost last week to Navy. We've got UConn, who, you know, have won, you know, 4 or 5 national championships at the men's and women's. They've won 8 or 9. South Florida, Central Florida, which is the largest school right now. So Tulane, Houston, SMU, and Dallas. And so, you know, we've got some schools that spend money, and our school is the smallest school in Division I athletics. We have 4,000 total students between undergrad and graduate and law school. And so we're the smallest school with Division I football. The next closest one to us would be Wake Forest. We spend, our budget was $60 million we had for our athletic department, and they came nowhere close to break even. But we looked at it as a marketing tool for the university to get our image out there. So it was very important how we did on the playing fields, and that they competed at our school. So, and if you also do some more research, you'll look back at we won the President's Cup, which is a conference champion in all sports. You know, ever since we were in the American Conference, which is 3 years now, and then prior to that in Conference USA, we won it like 8 years in a row of schools that were spending triple what we were, or double what we were spending. So, you know, the school subsidized athletics to the tune of probably $22 million a year. And the revenues from football and basketball come nowhere near to covering the costs of athletic programs. So you'll hear a lot of things out in the media a lot of time about, well, you know, they can't afford to do that, or, you know, let's just throw money at it. They always talk about Texas, that they have so much money, they can throw any kind of money in and pay off anybody. Well, it just doesn't operate like that. I mean, there's tremendous amount of expense with running a Division I athletic program. At the highest levels, it's just absolutely astronomical. I think Ohio State has the largest budget right now, and it's over $100 million just for athletics. And as opposed to there's schools that would be like, let me say, like in Windsor's area, there would be, let's say Wayne State would probably spend maybe $1.5 million on their whole athletic, maybe $2 million on their whole athletic program. A school like Central Michigan, Western Michigan, which would be a MAC school, those schools spend probably 10 to 15 million a piece. And then you'd have anywhere from, like, again, back to Ohio State's, Alabama's, Texas, they're in the hundreds of millions of dollars. So they're spending, the stakes are high. There's a tremendous amount of emphasis on facilities. And the facilities industry drives recruiting, it drives fan appreciation, fan experience. Our philosophy at Tulsa is, I'd like to send you a link that we just did, just another project I did just before we left. We spent $1.8 million on the renovation of our men's basketball locker room. And there's a video on the TulsaWorld.com. I'll send it to Rob so you guys can look at it, but there's a walking tour of it. So we spent $1.8 million. Just think of the home you could build in Tecumseh for $1.8 million. And this was like a 3,000 square foot renovation of a place that had 4 walls and a floor and a ceiling on it already. So we added retinal scanners for the eyes, so the players walk in, it's got Star Trek doors that they put their hand up, a palm reader, the door opens, they go into a little portico, and another door opens, and then inside that portico there's video walls all around them with surround sound. And then the change is also, we built a video team room in there that has seating, a theater room for 18 people to sit in captain's chairs. And it's just really, really spectacular. And we got behind in our facilities as it relates to, we're recruiting up against Memphis, UConn, and if we spend $1.8 million, they're spending $3 to $5 million on renovations. So the money's absolutely crazy. And at some point, I would sit in my office and I'd go, this is nuts, because we'd start getting pricing it back in on the stuff that we wanted to do, because our coaches would go out and they'd see other facilities around the country. God, we got to have this. And I'd start putting a pencil to it, dealing with vendors on trying to get prices back, and it would be like, oh my God, this is going to hurt financially. So we, and that's fun. The fun part is, like, everything we did at Tulsa, we were 100% funded up front before we put a shovel in the ground. That was our business, because we're a private school. We got no money from the state. And we just basically, our development team would go out. I would meet with them and say, this is what they want to do, this is what it's going to cost. And they would go out and raise the money. And in fact, that project, we raised over $2 million for $1.8 million project, $1.8 million. Does that make sense? So the development went out and raised more money than we needed for it. So we started adding some stuff at the end to get closer to budget. So that's a pretty neat situation. When we renovated the women's basketball and women's volleyball areas, we spent about $800,000 between the two areas, and they couldn't raise the money as we got into it. And athletic department had to come up and take the money out of their operating budget to cover it. So, but there was back to the emphasis on, they needed it for recruiting. They felt to be able to be on par with what everybody else was doing in our conference at our level. It gets a little crazy because, when you're at the Tulsa level, which is that next tier down, like, we're not Oklahoma and we're not Florida, University of Florida, but our coaches' psyche is that, well, we need to compete against those schools because that's where we want to be. But it becomes an arms race. We only have so many resources, and you have to really be calculating how you spend the money so that you get the best bang for the dollar. And at the end of the day, understand that we're not Ohio State and we're not Texas, but we can do some things that, the biggest, it's incidentally the biggest thing that you'll see in college athletics right now is that everybody all of a sudden has to have an indoor training facility for football. Because, the 3 days a year when they're training to go to the next big game and they need to be inside. Well, for 100 years they played football out in the elements, and all of a sudden now this is the biggest thing in all of college sports, so everybody's wanting these buildings. And our campus is an urban campus at Tulsa, so if the building cost $40 million to build, we had to spend another $2 to $3 million in site work by going in and buying property of houses, using eminent domain, which would be something for you to look at for research. I won't get into all that, but that's when we would go in and say, basically, we're taking your house. And here's what the check is. Take it, leave it. If you want to fight us, we'll see you in court, but we're going to call it eminent domain because it's progress. And we're not, around the university, there was a bunch of slum housing that went in and, basically if their house is worth $30,000, we gave them a check for 90, and they would either say yes or no. And sometimes we ended up in court, but generally, progress wins at the end of the day. So that was fun to be involved in that process, because there's people that know that, we're always trying to expand our footprint, and they would just basically hold out to the very end of some houses that would be like, somewhere down around the bridge in Windsor, that, people just hold out and try to get every dime out of it, even though it's not worth it, and we're being fair to what we're offering them. We had a deal where, good situation, this interesting situation, a guy held out. We were building the soccer practice facility. A guy held out with his property. We took the street out, the house was there, and the guy said, I'm not selling. And then we took it to court, and instead of him getting the 90, he got 45,000. So we got half of what we did, because the judge did, as an arbitrator, went in and said that under eminent domain, that the university's been more than fair with you. This is what you're going to be awarded. So he ended up losing on that deal. So a lot of fun. I mean, being involved in not just one specific sport has been great. And I would encourage you as students that, if you choose this profession, get as much experience in the wide range of things as you can do, because it's only going to help you down the road. I love every minute of it. I'm in a position right now where I'm not involved directly with athletics, and I miss it. I miss it a bit, but it's not something that I can't get back in at the I've been in college athletics for the better part of 25 years, and enjoyed every minute of it. So I think the other thing I want to talk to is, again, talk about the funding model. Is that, you're probably really familiar with like Michigan State, Michigan, the Tulsa, Stanford, Notre Dame, Duke. Those are all private schools, and those schools are all funded through endowments. And so endowments are money that has been pledged to the university, that's sitting out there in an account, that's earning money for the university. And so, for instance, Tulsa had about $1 billion endowment that was just money that's been raised over 125 years that can't be touched. And so we spend the interest off that earnings of the endowment. Some years you make good returns, 18 to 20%. Some years you don't make any. Like in 2008, we had lost almost 30% of our endowment in 2008 when the market dropped. Some schools, lost well over almost 70% of their endowment, which hurts, because that's how they develop their operating budget. As it relates to maintenance, a private university is set up totally different because of the funding model. Depending on how returns go on the investment, we work on an 18-month cycle. So just because the market drops today doesn't affect anything we're doing here in the next year, because it's budgeted. It would affect what we're doing in 2 years if the market dropped today. So at a state school, the big schools are reliant on state funding for a lot of the projects that they do. And incidentally, athletic facilities at a state school are all funded by the athletic department. So generally, like when Michigan is doing a renovation of their stadium, if you read about that, I think it's a couple $100 million that they're spending. That's all through sale of seat licenses, season ticket pledges, and they'll fund that and finance a lot of that money based on future suite revenue and advertising sales, those kinds of things. Um, if you notice a school like Notre Dame, if you've ever watched, they've had a lot of controversy about adding a video board. Well, that's all that's done is held Notre Dame back from being able to raise money. So, for instance, Tulsa, we didn't have any advertising in the stadium at all, non-game day. So for 6 days a year was the only day when we had a sign up, for instance, a Pepsi sign or a car dealer sign. So for the other 350 days a year, you'd walk in, you wouldn't see any advertising on our campus anywhere. And that's just a whole totally different philosophy. Whereas like a lot of bigger schools, they're tied to the dollar, and they raise a lot of the money because they need the money. Not that we didn't, but it was just our philosophy. And Notre Dame's like that. Us, Duke, at Duke, if you watch at their basketball games, you won't see any courtside signage. It's all just the image that they're trying to portray, that we can't be bought, and there's a price for that. So at softball, we have a lot of time with coaches would say, well, I got a car dealer, and he gives me a free car, and I'd like to put a sign up for him here at the softball game. And say, no, can't do it. So it was just off the table. So another project that I hang my hat on a lot is we did a renovation of our football stadium, where we added 27 suites, we added 400 club seats, press box, we dropped our seating from 40,000 seats to 25,000 seats. And the whole attendance across the board with college football at the mid-major level has been pretty level. There's just not a lot of schools their attendance has been increased. So we felt that, and we took a lot of flack, that we were going to drop the seating capacity of our football stadium because we just didn't have the fan base that we needed. So it's just like in business, you wouldn't overbuild capacity in a business or a plant, manufacturing, more than you need. So we decided we're going to drop the seats down to 25,000. We took a historical data, figured out what number we wanted to reach, and we basically set out to attain that goal. And since we did that, it's been a great atmosphere for our college athletes, because now it looks like if the stadium holds 25 and we average probably about 21,000, it looks packed every game. And that's such a great atmosphere for the kids, because they come out and they don't see empty seats. Whereas in the old stadium, if we had 20,000 seats in a 40,000 seat stadium, half of it's empty. So the psyche is like, oh my God, where is everybody? Where now we built something, we added a video board, and just did all the modern amenities that a football stadium has. So put a kick-ass sound system in there. When the team comes out to the video board, you can just feel the bass in your heart, basically. And we spent a lot of money on restrooms, concessions, and all the fan amenities that we could to make it a great experience for basically a $20 ticket. So now, since we did that, we were the first ones to jump on board at lowering our seating capacity. And if you've noticed around, a lot of people are doing the same thing, are keeping seating capacities lower. When I first looked at it, I started doing some research about Major League Baseball, how in the early 90s, a lot of the teams, like even the Tigers, if you remember, used to play over at Tiger Stadium, and they hold 60, 70,000 seats. Cleveland, Baltimore, Detroit. Those stadiums were just massive and expansive, and the atmosphere was terrible. And so we decided, let's look at this, because they dropped from 30, let's say 50,000 seats down to 30,000 seats, and they created a demand that was never there before for the tickets. Because if people know, you don't know the psyche of this, if you go to any concert at any time and you don't have to go and pre-buy a ticket, and you can walk up and get a ticket, you're going to wait and hold on to your money until, what's the weather like? Or, is it snowing? Or, so it really worked at Tulsa because now we created a demand that wasn't there. Because whenever we had Oklahoma come into town or Arkansas, we would sell out those games, but when we had Tulane come, we'd have 20,000. So those are some neat things to look at too, as it relates to attendance and seating capacities and how the evolution of modern facilities have happened. You'll see it a lot going on now because soccer's a lot of dropping their seating capacities and bringing the fans closer and making every seat a good seat. So I probably just rambled on way too much there, but Rob, do you want to jump in there and throw me a lifeline?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. You guys have some questions for Terry? Any questions?
Is Tulsa gonna beat Cincinnati this weekend?
No, they're not.
All right.
But I'll say one thing about football. I've seen the football experience change. When I first went to Tulsa, our head football coach was making just over a couple $100,000. And we just now, the new guy we hired before I left, it's his first year there, Coach Montgomery, an awesome guy. He makes $1.8 million is his base salary. So salaries have increased. The whole cost of what we spend on athletics is absolutely out of control. And now they're renegotiating the guys at the top. And Nick Saban, I think, is the highest. He's making $8 million, I think, is what he's scheduled to make. Bob Stoops at Oklahoma is almost $6 million. So it's crazy when a school of Tulsa's size is paying their football coach $1.8 million, and he's got a 7-year contract. With every year, he gets an automatic $200,000 to $300,000 raise, automatic, without wins or losses. And the president of the university is only making $500,000. So you really kind of wonder at the end of the day who's making what and who's in charge. Our basketball coach, Frank Haith, he's making $1.2 million, I think is what he's at. And their assistant coaches now make more than what we paid our head coach even 10 years ago. So salaries are escalating out of control.
Other questions?
Who is better, you or Rob?
Rob's older. Rob's older, but Rob was the same age as my older brother. He played hockey with my older brother this whole way. So Rob and I don't know if he's told you the story, we lived together in Europe, we played together over there. And so we absolutely had a blast. We were laughing last night about that. So we never really ever played minor hockey together because he was always that much older than me. Rob's 60. I just turned 40, so. Yeah. I think the biggest thing that's going on in college athletics right now is the issues with concussions, price of the cost of attendance, how schools are paying players now at all levels, not just football. But it's a huge deal that Alabama and the big boys of the world can get together and say, Tennessee, for instance, is paying their kids $7,000 each, over and above already paying for the books and their tuition and room and board. So that's $7,000 that they get to spend, on their own to do what they need to do. And it's become a recruiting issue because, like for instance, Tulsa, I think ours, we ended up deciding that we're only going to pay almost $3,000, I think is what it ended up to be. So there's that issue. And then also the conference realignment. There's always talk about conference realignment because at Tulsa, we were always on the cusp. We changed conferences 3 times when I was at Tulsa. When I first went there, we were in the old WAC, which the Western Athletic Conference. And there were 16 teams in that conference. And then that conference split up because they said, oh, it's too big. There's too many teams, it's too big, it's too much, travel's too much. Well, which ended up to be crazy in the end because now if you look at the Big Ten, now has what, 14 teams, 16 teams, and then the Pac-12 now has 16 teams, and now everybody's going back to these super conferences, which there's a bigger divide between the haves and the have-nots now than there's ever been at any other time since I've been involved in athletics. And you know, the people that want to spend the money are going to continue to spend the money, and the people that can't are eventually going to fall by the wayside. So there'll eventually be, you know, there's 5 power conferences now, but I think there'll be eventually be 4 super conferences that have all 16 teams in them, and they'll have like a Division I Super 8, and then a Division I, which would be for everybody else. And you either have to have a certain amount of money that you're spending to be involved in that upper group, and then it's going to have a whole nother level. So at Tulsa, we were willing to spend whatever we needed to do to stay at the highest level, because we have so much invested now that we can't afford not to do it, if that makes sense. So at some point, there's a tipping point that's going to break everybody.
What's going to happen with the football playoffs?
Well, the football playoffs, the big issue there is they want to expand it. I mean, that's the media talking, but the BCS, the old BCS is locked into 2025, so we're going to have 4 teams for the next foreseeable future. There won't be any change there with that.
Other questions? Yes.
As a private, like working for a private school, what are the best types of fundraisers to raise money?
The best types of fundraisers? Well, we don't spend a lot of time doing bake craft shows or any of that art stuff. We spend a lot of time just what we call friend developing friends of the university, and it's a long process. You have to be committed to do it, but you just can't drop off at people's houses and go, hey, I need $1 million because this is the project we got. It's relationship, development that's gone over time, that Tulsa, incidentally, has some of the wealthiest people living there in the community that are so generous to the university. And we had a guy that just came to us, and a guy named Mike Case. He came to us. He's the largest property owner in the South United States, Southwest. So he has somewhere over like 30,000 apartment rooms, if you will, units, not necessarily complexes, but units that he has. So you just think of that, 30,000 at what? The average 1-bedroom apartment, let's say it's $800 a month. Just think of the revenue that generates. And he lives in Tulsa, loves our programs. He says, I want to build you guys a tennis center. And we're like, well, it's not on our capital plan here, but we'll find a way to build it and make it work. And he said, okay, so he got involved and funded our tennis program. And incidentally, we hosted 2 NCAA Division I tennis championships, and then we're hosting them this year as well. So we're the 3rd time we'll be hosting NCAA championships for tennis. So we work with them. It's difficult when you work with a donor because we have certain standards at a university that we have to meet. We can't just drop a spaceship into the middle of campus if somebody wants to build it. It has to look and feel like it belongs. And if you've been on our website, you can see how every building has the same attributes of all the other buildings. Like we use the same kind of materials, the same roof pitches, and so they all look and feel like they're part of our campus. And that was huge with us. And a lot of it, and that costs usually about 30% more to build a building on our campus than it would anywhere else. And so sometimes the donors get a little excited because it's like, well, we really, could we save some money on this and not hook it up to the central plant for heating and air conditioning? And we're like, no, we need to do it because, in 20 years from now, it's the most cost-effective way to do it. So had a lot of those discussions, and there's people that were paid a lot higher, more than me, that were in charge of building those relationships with the donors, and it's not something that happens just overnight. It's over time, and we did a really, really good job at Tulsa of taking care of our donors, and everything from how we treat them at games to how we recognize them we did I mean, I can't say enough, but we had to do it. But we took care of our donor base.
Okay, got another question.
As a smaller school, what changes would you make to the Power 5 and Group of 5 conference layout?
I didn't catch that last part.
Like the Group of 5 and Power 5 conferences, like as
Yeah.
a smaller school, what changes would you make going forward? It seems that the Power 5 would just get a benefit.
Well, I think the interesting part is that, the Power Five schools conferences, there's probably about the bottom half of each Power 5 conference that could easily be in the 6th or 7th conference because of what they are. Like, let's take Wake Forest, for instance. They're at the bottom of the ACC. They don't spend money, but they get so much TV revenue to compensate their athletic program that it offsets them. So, for instance, let's take another one. Let's go to the SEC. So, like Vanderbilt, they suck at everything, right? So, why would they continue to spend the money to stay where they need to be? Because they need to associate with the higher level of, it's like a friend. Everybody wants to have, the best friends, whether you belong there or not. So, I don't know how you change that. There needs to be some cap on spending, I think. But as long as the football school, everything in college athletics is driven by football. People make all the decisions for everybody. And it hurts the basketball people, but all the money, because of the playoff system that's generated, drives all the decisions with how it affects the tennis program. We would fly our football team. Our football team charters a plane everywhere they go. They just buy the plane, they come and get them. Whereas like our tennis program, they would have to drive. They'd have to drive to Houston, which is 8 hours, 9 hours. And then our football team and basketball teams, they charter jet everywhere. Both men's and women's basketball, football charter everywhere they go. They don't ever go commercial anywhere they go. And some of that stuff is just out of control, where they basically would fly to Dallas, which is about a 3-hour drive from Tulsa. They'll rent them, instead of getting 2 buses and going down there. So,
Other questions?
I don't know if I answered the question, but sometimes it's just mind-boggling.
What about schools like John Hopkins and where they fall and things like that?
Well, their big thing is lacrosse, so that's what they hang. It's not a huge revenue generator if it generates any revenue. They're kind of like Tulsa. They get subsidized. Their athletic program is subsidized by the university, and they just say, hey, here's what we're spending. They make a limit. They're kind of like different than Tulsa because Tulsa says we're going to spend what we need to do to stay where we're at. Whereas John Hopkins' philosophy is, hey, we're an academic. We're in academics first. Athletics is second in the food chain, and we're going to spend this or that. They have a budget. They live by it, and they go with it. But they're not a football school, so they're not even in the equation,
They are in the top 10 this year.
In football?
Yeah. For their conference, for Division III.
Yeah, okay. Well, Division III, if you look at the philosophy of Division III, it's academics first. Like, they would play like, Harvard, and, some of those schools that those kids are there to go to school first. They're academic, so strong academically that it's just a different world. But I bet, their head football coach, I bet he probably makes about $150,000. Where our coordinators at our school are probably making, and our offensive coordinator was making 300 something, and our defensive guy was 350-ish.
Another question?
Yeah, so for being a Canadian student and getting a Canadian degree, what obstacles might there be to get into an administrative position in the States?
Rob, I didn't catch that. I can't hear it, sorry.
He's saying, hey, as a Canadian student and growing up here in Canada, what would be some of the obstacles of getting across the border and maybe finding work over there in athletic administration?
The easiest part is, I've actually had I've had probably over the 17 years in Tulsa, I've had probably about 4 different Canadian kids that came down and were my graduate assistants. That's the easiest way to get started in the business. Come get your advanced degree, have somebody else pay for it, and I just basically, through word of mouth, found that the kids, one kid worked in the tennis center, the other kid is actually from Sioux, Ontario, that's actually down there right now when I left. And we had a soccer girl that was my graduate assistant. That's how they got started. They took the GA job in the facilities. They kind of got exposed to not just being in tennis center, but being in the basketball, football, working in game ops, working in marketing, selling programs, just kind of doing a little bit of everything. And that's how you get your feet. But it's all feet wet, but you also get into it and saying, hey, this is what I really like this aspect of it, Some people like the facilities, they don't, they got in and they go, I want to be in marketing because it's more fun up there, So I would continue to, and they post those jobs online. If you go to the NCAA News and you go to jobs, they'll post like graduate assistant positions and just go ahead and apply for them. That's the easiest. And don't be afraid to volunteer either. There's nothing short of volunteering. I know that costs money to volunteer, but that's also a good way to get your feet wet.
Anybody else, questions?
Otherwise, you have to have a work visa like you would any other job. And that's a pain in the butt, obviously. Or get married American. How's that?
Any other questions, folks? Corey?
Men and women are created equal, proven fact. Why does no one like women's sports? How do you try and get people to like women's sports, even though it's just not very good?
Title IX, you need to research Title IX. So, Title IX, I don't know, I can't answer any of that question. That brings up another topic of Title IX. Title IX was implemented in so that they said, hey, if the university is spending $1 on men's basketball, they need to spend $1 on women's basketball. Yeah, within reason. But it's also driven by revenue. So when we did a renovation of the women's basketball, which we did first, we spent 400 and some odd thousand. I said 800, but if it's split, it's about 400,000. And then we go ahead and spend $1.8 million on men's basketball. Title IX says that you have to have comparable facilities. Now that's where it's opened up into interpretation to say, well, this is obviously 2 different things, but it's a renovation of men's and renovation of women's, so you're okay, you can make an argument on doing that. I mean, we had the philosophy at Tulsa that we were equal spending is whenever, we could. I mean, the budgets for women's basketball, exclusive of salaries, our men's basketball, he's what I say, he can make $1.6 million or something like that. And a women's basketball coach probably makes $200,000-300,000. But the operating expenses of women's basketball and men's basketball are exactly the same. So if they take our men's basketball team charters a jet for their basketball games, the women do. If the men have 3 sets of uniforms, 3 sets, home and away in a neutral, then the women have 3. So as it relates to that, that's where the equality in the funding is spent, whereas salaries were exclusive of that because you can always tie salaries back to revenue, back to your earlier question, because obviously more people are coming to our men's games and spending more money, therefore you can justify spending on salaries more than you could the women's coach. So there's some intricacies in there, Title IX. You see a lot of Title IX lawsuits at the high school level more than you do at the college level, because the high school level it is truly dollar for dollar, boys versus girls.
Any other questions? Yes?
What's the idea of the NCAA governing itself?
Did you get that one?
No, I didn't, sorry.
Do you like the idea of the NCAA governing itself, or should should they have another party come and govern the courts?
Rob, I didn't hear that, sorry.
He asked actually, do you think that the NCAA should govern itself, or should a third party come in, or a second party come in and govern it?
Well, you know, there's been talk about the Power 5 conferences just saying, just begging the NCAA, man, we're doing our own thing. The university presidents won't let that happen. They won't let you know, as much as the media wants to talk about it, they need a third party to adjudicate everything. Where the NCAA's gotten in trouble is that they just over-legislated everything. I mean, everything from, you know, how many text messages you can send to a kid, you know, how many miles you can drive in a day in a car as a recruit, how many visits you can have at home, you know, in person. I mean, it's just absolutely, if you've ever seen the NCAA manual, it's, you know, I mean, it's 2 inches thick. And now they're trying to get back to where it's a little bit more broad, common sense stuff instead of being down to the minutia of, you know, how many keys you can have on your keyring kind of stuff. I mean, it's crazy. The NCAA will always be around because they need somebody to be a third party. You know, Alabama's not going to police what Ohio State does. They can't send their investigators over there to make sure Ohio State's doing it. That would just be total chaos at that point. So,
Okay, hey, another
it's
question.
all back to football.
Another
Everything's
question.
back to football.
Any other questions? Nothing else? I got 2 questions. Number
Okay.
1, what was it like to win an NCAA championship?
It was kind of unexpected. You know, my senior year, we only had 2 seniors on that team. We had 12 freshmen. And so we went along the year before, we had an awesome team the year before. We had a way better team and then got beat out. Had a bunch of kids with bad attitudes. There were seniors that were kind of had bad, you know, all about them, not about the team, all worried about the draft. And then when we graduated, it was such a breath of fresh air.
We got a
And they were
lot.
gone.
We got a lot of that around here.
Yeah. So when they were gone, and we only had 2 seniors, me and another guy, it was just such a great thing to have a team come together. And we started winning games early, and by Christmas we're like, oh man, we're pretty good. And then we just kind of went on a roll and just never got stopped. And we were not the best team, or not the best talented team, most talented, but we were the best team that year, which, you know, in the end, they always talk about that, but it really is true to case. And I think on a personal note, that being my last game in college, winning the national championship in overtime at Lake Placid, you know, it was just such a, you know, it just gives me chills today, even, you know, 25 years later, how you know, it affects your life because, you know, at some point when you win something in that magnitude, you take it for granted when you're doing it. But I think as you get older, you know, nobody can ever take that away from you, that, you know, at least you've always got the winning, that you've been a winner no matter what you've done. So we had Robin know that there was a goalie on the other team. We beat St. Lawrence, and the goalie on the other team was from Windsor too. And we had played minor hockey against him on the way up, and you know, I saw him 6 years ago, and you know, he just has a whole different attitude when he sees somebody from Lake Superior after that deal, because it's like, you know, it's just good. So it's something you carry with you forever, and you know, they can never take it away from you. But it was totally unexpected. We didn't expect to win. We just kept rolling, went from game to game. It's different when you have all that pressure of, you know, being New England, Tom Brady, where everybody expects you to win every game. Nobody expects us to do anything, and then all of a sudden we won, and they go, oh. So one of the cool things too is we got to go to the White House, which we were the first team outside of the 1980 Olympic team to ever go to the White House, hockey team. And you know, and Ronald Reagan was the president. And then when we won again in '92, we went back to the White House, and Bush was the president. So we've got pictures that I have here in my office of Bush and Reagan. which is kind of cool when you look back on it. But
Okay, hey, last question, a little bit of advice for Canadian college students. You're a world traveler, been all over the world. It's an A, B, C, or D question. What country has the best beer? Canada, Holland, Germany, or the U.S.?
well, it's definitely not the U.S.
Yeah, why did you even?
I would say Canada, then Holland.
Are you really the fuck?
Okay, well, hey, I'll send that case of Canadian down to you. Hey, thanks a lot,
You say
Terry,
that-
for your time.
You say that in Europe, like, make
I'm gonna have to be an A.
Thank you.
That's ridiculous. Man, when I was in Germany, I asked for Bud Light, and they're like, "Yeah, we got water on tap." And I started laughing so hard.
Okay, hey, folks. Hope you enjoyed it. And when you got that done, did you shut this off?
I don't think Nevin had it on the entire time.
Okay.